Okay, hi everyone. I'm back here with Maarten from South Africa again, and this time we're going to talk about a different topic, a slightly different topic called the problem of evil, which is, let's see, best summarized by, I think, Epicurus's description, which is basically, is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he's not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he's malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? I think that's a good introductory quote to use there, but more specifically, I'm interested in the notion how the Christian God cannot be considered evil based on his behavior. And so talking with Maarten on this to see how you resolve that conundrum. Okay, so actually, before we even begin, it'd be good to know what your position is in Christianity, since this is what that topic is involved. So first off, would you consider yourself a young earth creationist Christian?
No, but I'll just first introduce myself again so people can know who I am. My name is Maarten. I'm an industrial engineer, and Afrikaans is my first language. And some people might find this debate offensive, so stop listening to the debate now if you don't want to be offended. Okay, I'm a Christian, not a young earth creationist or something like that.
Oh, you aren't?
I'm still...
Now I was under the misperception of that because you're adamantly against evolutionary theory. So
no, I'm open. I'm open to it. Like you said, a creator can use evolution, a process like evolution, just like a car manufacturer uses a process to design cars.
Sure.
Like we said in the
so
previous debate.
It's a possibility that a God created the universe. The Big Bang, let's say, and then just let it run from there, perhaps even guiding it. That's what a lot of old Earth creationists believe in. But, okay.
Yeah, but the Big Bang sounds also a little bit sketchy sometimes, because whenever has an explosion made anything like productive or good, understand?
That's because the Big Bang wasn't an explosion. The Big Bang is not an explosion. It was an expansion. The term Big Bang was a pejorative used against the term, the concept of an expanding universe, but it just happened to catch on. It's kind of like Yankees. I'm an American. Yankee is a term that we use for ourselves. Same with gringo. Both of them were used offensively against us in the past, and we just adopted the terms because we found them amusing. And the same thing with the Big Bang. It was an amusing term, so it was adopted, even though it implies an explosion, but there never was an explosion. Just clarifying.
Okay, cool.
That.
Then it makes more sense to me.
Yeah. It was not an explosion. Yeah. But okay, go on. You were saying you're essentially an old Earth creationist.
No, I'm still open. I don't know. I don't know if it's old or young. I'm still open. I don't know.
Okay. I don't think that'll interfere with the topic, although it would, if we were to introduce evolution into this topic, then it would change things from how I anticipated the discussion might go. But since we're talking about the problem of evil, that's neither here nor there. That problem persists whether or not one believes in an old Earth or a young one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've heard multiple atheists, like the cosmic skeptics, say that the problem of evil is not really a good argument against God.
No, it's not.
You think it's a really good argument?
No, I don't. It's an argument that if God exists, then he is necessarily evil. So it's that if he exists, that doesn't mean he is not. Well, I have a number of arguments that I would use for this, and that's why in the previous debate you had more questions for me. This one I would have more for you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, my main question is, do you believe that God is all-powerful and all-knowing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if he's all-powerful or knowing, but his knowledge would be probably great, just like a game creator's knowledge of everyone in the game. You can know everything about everyone in the game.
That's true, but he wouldn't be, but not omnipotent. So Actually, this
So I don't
whole
know.
discussion may go down the toilet right about now because
But okay, say we assume for the
Assume.
discussion that is all known. Okay.
okay,
We can
well,
assume
because
for the
that's
discussion.
that's the argument that that most Christians will make, that God is all powerful and all knowing, and that's I think that is the biggest problem within Christianity itself. If you don't assume that He's all powerful and all knowing, then and you don't believe that the Bible is literally true, then there's so much, I'm not going to say wiggle room, but it's basically the same concept. You can reinterpret and reimagine the situation to make more sense, to fit observed reality, and you don't have to run into the problem of evil necessarily. For example, if you have a God who just creates the universe and then sits back and sees how it turns out, and lets the concept of suffering exist, that doesn't necessarily mean that such a God would be evil. He would be neutral in that case, or she. I'm not going to be sexist. But in such a situation, you would have a God who's just set the rules that I'm hands off. I'm not involved. But that's not the God of the majority of Christianity.
Yeah, he's involved.
Yeah, they consider it involved, and especially the more fundamentalist Christians. And I was under the impression.
Okay, but we can assume for the debate then. We can say, okay, God knows everything. We can assume that. I don't know if it's 100% right, but we can assume that for the debate to make it interesting.
Okay. All right. Well, then here's my argument, and okay, maybe you can pick it apart. And that is, if we assume that God is all-powerful and all-knowing, then before He even created the universe, He would have in His mind not just the entirety of the history of Earth. He would not just know that, but He would know all the potential worlds that He could create and all their potential outcomes. Correct? I mean, that's kind of the definition of being all-knowing. So that means He could have chosen essentially from an infinite variety of universes to create. And if He decided, apparently He chose to create this one, since that's the one we exist in, therefore it would be the universe He wanted to create. And the exact outcome would be what He wanted to create. Now, Christians will often say, well, He is not to blame for evil because it was Satan who deceived Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve disobeyed God, and that entered sin into the world, and from that point on, it's all about salvation. God providing the mechanism eventually through Jesus Christ to save humanity for those who are willing to essentially be born again, as the Bible says, accept Jesus into their heart and all that sort of thing, to avoid damnation. The problem there is that if God had an infinite variety of universes to select from, then He could imagine a universe where everyone happens to make the right choice, right? It just happens to. Satan doesn't rebel, or Lucifer doesn't rebel and become Satan, and Adam and Eve don't disobey God. Okay, those two things right there would stop the chain reaction that goes all the way to the end of the earth and hell and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so if he knows that like Satan would rebel, he shouldn't know if he created him or what. Is that your point? He shouldn't
there's a couple of
made
options.
him to exist.
A couple of options. One, he could have chosen, if he was creating this universe, he could still say, well, I won't create Lucifer, problem solved. Because by not creating Lucifer, he would not end up deceiving Adam and Eve and so on. Or he could have changed his mind, basically created him to not rebel, in which case...
Like a robot or something.
Well, that's the thing. That's the usual response from Christians. They say, okay, well, that means that God doesn't want people to including the angels, presumably, to be robots, and so he gave them free will. But there's a problem with that, and that is nowhere in the Bible does it say that free will exists. There are a number of places where it says you need to make the right decision. You have to make the right choices in order to be saved. But that doesn't mean you have to be the one making being the source of the decision, the source of the choice. If God's the one making the choice, then and you're just he essentially is telling you or giving you the instructions. Let's see. Now that sounds more like a verbal thing, but he's the one who's actually controlling you because he designed you specifically to make the choices you've made. Then you still have to make the right choices to be saved. But if he was the one who programmed you to make the specific choices, then you don't have. You're not responsible for that. What was that?
What does God have to do to give someone free will? Like, how is it impossible for a creator to give someone free will?
Well, it's not that it would be impossible. It's just that the Bible says numerous things, at least 20 passages that are contrary to the concept of free will. And I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of these for you just to work with.
But I just want to know what would count as free will.
What would count as free will? Well, the decisions would have to be ones that you make yourself.
Okay, so your decisions are not made by yourself.
Well, it would have to be, okay, you are the one who has full control over your mind to make moral decisions. It doesn't have to be just moral decisions, but any decisions about what actions you would want to take. So, for example, if you are met with an opportunity, okay, this tree is about to fall onto somebody, and you can say to the person who's underneath the tree, hey, there's a tree's about to fall, step out of the way, or you can just watch it fall. Or let's make it even more extreme. You have a gun. You can choose to shoot someone or not to shoot them. And if those choices that you make are your choices that are made within your mind, within your full conscious awareness, then you have free will, essentially. You are the one who is responsible for those decisions. But if someone else has programmed you to behave in a specific way, then you don't have those choices.
So you think you're programmed, like you don't have free will?
For scientific reasons, I think that it's unlikely that we have free will. There's a number of experiments that have been done. One of the more interesting ones is that researchers viewing fMRI scans of...
Yeah, I remember that.
You remember that, but for the audience, basically they were studying scans of people making decisions, last-minute decisions, and a binary choice. They could choose the left or the right option. And in almost all cases, the researchers can determine what the person's going to choose up to 10 seconds before they have the perception that they're making a free will choice. Meaning they're saying, okay, I'm going to choose now. But their brain, 10 seconds ago, has already made that decision, and it's captured on the fMRI scanner, meaning that that decision was made at an unconscious level, not at the conscious level. That's just one thing, but there are other experiments that have been done that also hint that free will may not exist. But when we're talking Christianity, it really doesn't matter what the science says, because Christians aren't really going to pay attention to what the science says specifically. They're more interested in what the Bible says, right? I mean, that's the most important source of information. So that's why, as I pointed out, there's like 20 some odd different passages which indicate that free will doesn't exist. And here are some examples. Proverbs 16:4, the Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for the day of disaster. Proverbs 16:9, in their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Proverbs 16:33, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Proverbs 19:21, Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 20:24. A person's steps are directed by the Lord. Ephesians 1:11. In him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. And finally, Jeremiah 10:23. Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It is not for them to direct their steps. And those are just the ones I think are the strongest ones that indicate that God plans everything, not just some things, but everything. And the logical conclusion from that is, if God plans everything, then he planned exactly how the universe would turn out, how history would roll out. And thus, he would be the one who's entirely responsible for every atrocity ever committed by a human being. That's where my argument is.
Okay, but if we have no free will, why do we can't really then throw people into prison? Because even in a court case, they look at if the person had free will, and it would affect the outcome of the court case.
That's a good point.
Mentally ill or something like that.
That's a good point, except that the actual threat of being thrown in jail for behaving in a way that society deems inappropriate is one of the factors that will affect your behavior, whether or not free will exists. It's just like you could have a computer program that doesn't have free will, that simply reacts like, oh, if there is a particular, you could have let's say a character in a game. If you shoot at that character, they will often, the non-player character, the artificial intelligence, will jump out of the way, for example. That would be a decision that's made by the character, not free will, because it's just obviously a programmed character, but it's responding to being shot at, so it jumps out of the way. And so having jail as a threat is something that a person would naturally incorporate into their behavior or into their decision-making process.
Okay, but say we make a computer program and we want to give it free will. Do you think it's possible, perhaps, to make robots or something with free will?
I think that we will very soon, probably, I'm talking within the next decade or two, maybe three, be able to create artificial intelligence that at least matches our level of free will, whatever it actually happens to be. If we don't have free will, then it would not either. But that doesn't mean that it would be any. It doesn't mean it would be like a robot in the sense that many Christians mean, a mindless entity.
Okay, but so say we give robots free will and they rebel against us, we would destroy them, wouldn't we?
We probably would, but only because well, see, that things are going to get kind of interesting when we get true general artificial intelligence, because those sorts of ethical problems are going to come up. If we create a life form capable of suffering and we make it suffer, then I would say we're evil.
Okay, so if we create a robot and he can feel pain, and we kill it after it has rebelled against us, then we're evil, or what?
Well, if it rebelled against us for a just reason, like we were making it suffer, then I would say that would be self-defense, potentially. We're talking about a situation where we have something that is definitely our slaves, our machines. Right now, robots are just machines for us. They don't have any sense of free will. They don't suffer. They don't have any experiences that are comparable to our own. But that is changing. So at some point, the ethical debate will tip, and if we get to the point, and I suspect we will, where artificial intelligences, robots in robot bodies, are indistinguishable from humans, then that's going to be a very difficult dilemma for society to deal with. We'll have to recognize that they are living entities that deserve the same rights we do. And I think we'll end up having robots that are not to that level specifically because we still want the effectiveness of having a robot, having robot servants. But inevitably, we're probably going to create such an artificial intelligence that is at least as free-willed as we are. And at that point, we have to reevaluate things for that class of artificial intelligence.
Okay, but say they use their free will to rebel against us. We wouldn't really care that much. Okay, we would care that they feel pain, but we would still eliminate them because, you understand,
No, I can see if they present an existential threat to us, we'll fight back, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's the same thing is true for other humans. If they attack us, we'll fight back as well.
Okay, and people that hunt for fun, is that evil according to you because they kill animals and animals feel pain?
I'm a hunter myself, or at least I have been in the past.
Okay, so you're a monster according to your own logic, or what?
Maybe. Because morality is something that changes over time. That's another thing that I have an argument with Christians on.
There is no real good real good and evil. Is there real good and evil in your worldview? Or?
Depends what you mean by real. I think what you mean is objective versus subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's just subjective.
I think everything is subjective ultimately, because look at to take it to one extreme, you could say that mineral. The raw earth is the pristine ideal form. If you value just a raw rock planet with no contamination, it's conceivable that someone might have valued that. And if that's the case, then life itself would be like a fungus, an intrusion, some sort of thing that breaks down that perfect entity of an earth, and thus life is bad, and destroying all life would be good. So, not that I hold that value, of course. I'm just saying that as an extreme, one can interpret killing everything as good, and that's why I would say no. That's why I say that morality is relative, but it is nevertheless very important to us. It represents our values, even if our values do change over time. There was a time when slavery, in the biblical time period, the slavery was a-okay, and it was expected that people would have slaves and that good people would be able to possess slaves. But now we consider it abhorrent, and same with women being treated as property. That was expected. That was the norm back then. Now people who treat women as property should expect to be treated badly themselves. So we consider that immoral.
Then it's just your opinion that God is evil, because
it's more subject. It is to a degree. Yes, it is. But it's when we define evil by behavior, and we do define evil by behavior in the sense that if you wanted to identify an evil person, you look for behaviors such as murder and genocide, theft, rape, slavery, cannibalism, lying, betrayal, animal and child abuse, forced incest, things like that. Those behaviors are what we would look at as identifiers for an evil person, and those are incidentally all the behaviors that that the God of the Bible commits in multiple times.
I don't think so, but
well, I can show you examples of every one of them if you want.
Richard Dawkins said that the universe we observe has precisely the properties we would expect. If there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. Yep. So if there is no creator, there is no design, there is no purpose, there is no real good or evil.
That's right.
Okay. So
it's only what we make of it.
Purpose.
Well, it's what we make of it. It's like the only purpose to life, or our lives, is what we make of it. and now this is, I'm saying the atheistic point of view. The Christian point of view is that God created us all for some purpose, although nobody seems to know what that purpose is, and that He gives us hope and meaning. I don't know what that hope is for, nor what that meaning would be, but from my atheistic perspective, what gives us hope and meaning and purpose is ourselves. And society is a reflection of that. And there's an amalgam of hopes and dreams that people develop as society grows up and progresses over time. Morality is something that changes, definitely. I mean, it's hard to say that I don't think there's any justification to say that morality doesn't change over time, simply because of as that one example, slavery. It was okay. In fact, it was considered good, and now it's considered one of the most reprehensible evils.
But we still have like reformed slavery, kind of slavery, where you like sign a contract and then you're like a slave to the company or something like that.
Kind of. Yes, you can argue that, but it's not the same thing, because you can always say, you know what, screw it, I'm leaving this company, and go. And yeah, there may be some penalties that you get if you had an early leave contract or something like that, but you can do that, and it's not going to kill you. It's not going to destroy you. You have that option to choose that way out, whereas that's not an option in actual slavery, especially like biblical slavery, and all the way up to the slavery during prior to the American Civil War. So,
what you said, there's meaning and purpose that people. So you have meaning and purpose. So I want to know, what's the meaning and purpose that you made up for yourself? Because I think only a creator can tell you what the real meaning and purpose or something is.
Well, okay, I'll answer mine, but I'm curious, what purpose did He give you?
I asked first.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. My purpose is, I had an existential angst when I was back in the 80s, wondering what was my purpose in life. I figured that, the saying 500 years from now, who will know the difference? There's nothing you do today will mean anything 500 years from now. In other words, nothing we do is actually anything meaningful. There's a few people from history who actually affect history and become part of the history books, but that's about it. The vast majority of humanity ends up disappearing and completely forgotten. So that's a sad truth. So I realized that what mattered to me, what gave my life meaning, was experiences. Just exploring different experiences that I found enriching. And so things like, I decided to write a novel. I just wanted to try it. I write a novel, sat down, started writing a novel, and it took a long time to learn all the ins and outs of that. But that process was extremely rewarding, I felt. That gave me meaning. But ultimately, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that 500 years from now, no one's going to know I ever existed, and I'm okay with that. If someone says, well, that sounds pretty hopeless, well, then I don't have that kind of hope. But that's not the kind of hope that means anything to me.
But if you existed forever, you wouldn't want that anyway. Like, say they found out something that you can exist forever.
Well,
would you want that?
When we talk of those high technology options like artificial intelligence, one of the options that is particularly intriguing to me, and I did a whole video on that, is the idea that we will eventually have the ability to completely disassemble a human being with molecular machines, nanotechnology, to completely disassemble a person's mind, and code every single position of every neuron and every cell and every whatever in the body on a computer. And once you've got that kind of computer substrate, a person running on a computer, you could actually have that person in a virtual world on that computer. Also, you could potentially transfer that mind, essentially that mind file, into a robot, and then you would have a robot body. And if they can make robot bodies that are stronger, faster, healthier, or at least never get diseases. They don't age, and they have greater sensitivity, a wider range of emotions than humans do, all those things, then that might be a good deal for a lot of people. And that would be something that kind of would interest me, as well as living as software in a virtual world. That could be interesting too. But all of those are experiences that...
But some atheists say it's like they don't want to live forever.
Yeah.
It's like not a blessing.
I don't want to be forced to live forever. I think one of the most horrifying things about Christianity is the idea that you're forced to live forever, essentially. Now, some views of Christianity don't say that. They'll say that those who don't believe in God end up thrown in the lake of fire and they die immediately. That's the second death, and then that's it. They're destroyed forever. There's nothing further. I don't know. I have to be thrown in fire to do that rather than just be made disappear, but that's not the argument of the most adamant of the Christians that I encounter, and that one is that you either burn in hell forever or you go to heaven forever. And I don't know if you've seen my video on heaven, but what the Bible says heaven is. Hell. Well, it's a form of hell. I wouldn't say it's as bad as having your skin burned off all the time, but it's pretty bad if your mind is essentially wiped. Not your mind, your memories.
Wiped all the time.
What was that?
Can you remember everything? Your mind is in a way wiped the whole time.
And that's very true.
Can you remember everything?
No, that's very true. In fact, I've kept a journal every single day of my life since I was 13 years old. I have a stack of journals that's almost as tall as I am that details every single thing that happened that I can remember each day of my life. And when I go back and read some of those old journals, there's a person who, I don't know, somewhere between a third and two-thirds of what his life was is nothing like what I remember now. And I've got a pretty good memory, and yet I don't have
okay, so do you also nag about that?
I think that's a tragedy that it disappears. It's sad that one forgets a lot of information. So I think that if anyone...
But I think in heaven, God is just going to let you remember all the good things in life, not the evil stuff.
But that's
because
not
otherwise it won't be heaven anymore. Understand? You will still be you.
I understand that's the idea, but that's not what the Bible says about that. Specifically, it says that let's see if I've got this right here. Let's see, what was it?
Perhaps while you're searching for it, I found it. Ask you something else.
Okay, I found it though here. It's Isaiah 65:17. It says, "See, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind." Which means if there's a new heaven and a new earth, those are the former things. They won't be remembered, nor will they come to mind. And if you can't remember anything about the old earth, if none of that's going to come to mind, then how are you going to remember your relatives, your friends, the life that you lived before?
I think perhaps just the bad stuff is not going to come to mind.
But it doesn't say that.
I'm not 100% sure.
It says
but even if it wipes everything away, I'm fine with it.
Really? I mean, but what are we but our memories?
Because God could have put me in any family, and He could have put me in any situation. So it's still going to be me. But I want to ask you: say we take your DNA programming code and we copy it and we make exact same another Derek. Would that be you, or would it be something else? Because I see it as something else, just like twins.
Yeah, essentially like twins. That's the perfect way to look at it. Exactly like identical twins, except that if you made a copy of an adult that's identical, then it would be more identical than twins, because as soon as the eggs separate into two entities, there can be introduced little changes that occur either environmentally or even genetically, but changes that occur to the genes from that point forward. So that's why twins are not generally identical. They're very close, but not completely, and they may have even different personalities.
Yeah, because but say someone copied me precisely, I wouldn't see that person as me, because I don't think it has my soul in it. You understand? If there's a soul.
But why would you think there's a soul? That's the thing, because I mean,
because I've seen evidence for it, but I posted it, but you still didn't have a response yet to the previous debate where I posted it. I posted some scientific studies that were done that seem to suggest there's something that we don't know about, like a soul. And I've even posted there that
I don't know about that. But I can say that the brain and the mind are, they develop in sync. What I mean by that is that before you're born, your brain's not formed, you have no mind, no memories, no thoughts. Then as your brain forms, it becomes, and you start, once you're born and you start developing languages, these are all things that your brain develops in step with your cognitive abilities. And then if you're an adult and you take brain damage, you get hit in the head by something, like the guy named Gage in the early 1900s, he took a rail spike, went right through his head, which should have killed him, but didn't. It just destroyed certain parts of his brain, and his personality changed. And that's true of anyone. You have a stroke, your personality can change. And then when you die, there's no indication that anything goes on after that. So it seems like there's no reason to think that there exists anything apart from the brain. The mind is an emergent property of the brain. So
I've seen some evidence like near-death experiences, and also that scientific studies that were done. Two scientists did the same test, and they got the same results. And it seems to suggest there's something else in you, like a soul or something. I see your body as like a computer program or a robot, and perhaps like a game, playing a game if your mouse is broken and stuff like that. That's like a hit against the head. So now your how you react in the game is like different. Your personality in the game is perhaps different. I see it perhaps like that. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but the same with if you die in a game, you're not really dead. The same with if you have a soul, your body dies, but you're not really dead.
But in the game, your body and your mind are software, so it's a little hard to...
No. You're outside the game.
I see. Your avatar in the game.
Yeah, your avatar dies, but you don't die. The same if you have a soul, your avatar dies, not you.
Well, I suppose that's a possibility. I don't see any evidence for that, but I wouldn't discount that.
Just go check that comment. Just go check that comment, then you can respond to it. I'd like to know what you say about it.
I haven't received any notifications from that you've replied to any.
No, yes. On the previous video, I posted a comment. You tagged it at the top, and you said you would still respond to it, but.
I didn't respond to that particular one. Oh, okay. I thought I'd gone through some of those. Anyway, okay. So at any rate, that's one thing that seems a little odd to me is if you're going to have your memories wiped when you go to heaven, then what's the point of anything that came before? Because we are our minds, essentially. We are our memories. Without our memories of all the behaviors that you did, then why go through this whole life on earth thing only to end up with a clean slate, and there you are, boom, in a world where you're not allowed to... you obviously can't have free will in heaven if you can't commit sins, which is what the Bible says happens in heaven. You can't sin. It's only good in heaven. So it seems to me that the whole exercise of having people born on earth, live their lives, making the right or wrong choices, dying, ending up in heaven or hell, that whole bit before going to heaven or hell is kind of pointless if their minds are going to be wiped.
Yeah, I don't think it's totally going to be wiped. I just think the bad stuff, because even in one way, Jesus says that Abraham was like talking to the one guy in hell. He still could remember his life and everything.
Yeah, but that wasn't the hell that everyone goes to. I mean, it wasn't
And heaven also the same. So I think all the bad experiences will be wiped away, because otherwise it won't be heaven anymore if you can remember all the bad stuff. But like God says, even the bad stuff will be used for the good of those who love Him. So even the bad stuff in your life will be used for good. And I think
if that were to happen,
remember that.
if that were to happen, though, then the Bible is incorrect, or at least incomplete, in what it says about what you'll remember in heaven. Because it does say former things.
Perhaps, I just think it's perhaps read like incomplete, like not 100% correct. You understand?
That I am, or that the Bible's not 100% correct?
So say, like, I remember you said Jesus commanded us to hate our fathers and mothers and our life. But that's not really what he meant. Understand? It's just a...
How do you know?
It's because if you look at the other passage where he says the exact same thing, he just says that whoever loves his mother, father more than me is not worthy of me. He says the exact same thing, just in a different way. So then you know he's not talking about hate. And in other places he also says whoever hates his brother is a murderer. So you understand? So then you understand the passage better than if you take it out of context.
See, the thing is, I think that makes it, what you're doing is revealing a contradiction. Instead of saying, okay, this says hate and this says love, wait a sec, this is not compatible. How can we make these both work? No,
it's just like a method of saying, like, compared to your parents and stuff, it would look like hate. Because the love has to be so much greater.
Yeah, well, how is that even possible? I mean, if you think about the person you've loved the most in your life, and then ask yourself, do you love Jesus even more than that? I mean, so much more than that. Not just a little bit more, but so much more that by comparison, you hate the person you love? Does that even make sense?
Say the person that you love the most, and say God didn't put you in that situation. He could have put you in another situation. Then you would have loved something else more. Because it's like loving someone else more is like loving a teddy bear that your father gave you more than your father. It's the same. You could have.
Well, if that teddy bear is intelligent and capable of being creating emotional bonds, then
you would love the teddy more than your father.
Well, yeah. I mean, the potential's there. The potential's there because a teddy bear. The reason it sounds silly is because you're implying a teddy bear is just a stuffed toy that doesn't do anything. But if you imagine a teddy bear, did you see Ted? And Ted 2, the movie Ted, it's about a teddy bear that comes to life. Now, that bond that the main character, Wahlberg, had with his teddy bear was that's a bond of friendship, closeness, because that teddy bear was essentially alive. So you could see that, you could love that teddy bear more than your father. I'm just saying
that gave it to you.
It doesn't matter if someone gives you something. If you don't ask for something, you shouldn't be. The other person should not expect anything in return. That's how I believe. If someone comes by on the street and gives you a gift, are you beholden to anything that person does just because they gave you a gift?
No, but I would expect if my father gave me something, I wouldn't love whatever he gives me more than him. You understand? And
what if he gave you his wife? What if he gave you a wife? Not his wife, because that might be your mom.
His wife.
But what if he gave you? Well, I don't want to say it as if you can actually have a woman as property. But let's say he introduced you to your wife, and you love her more. I mean, it's possible to love her more, right?
Yeah, that's possible.
And and if you want to carry it even
compared to God, it's not the same. Like those are two humans compared to. You understand?
Well,
like
what I don't understand is that
different.
If you
between God and a human.
Yeah, but do you literally love God? I mean, you actually feel that emotion, love, so much stronger than for any other human being you've ever known, that it's almost as if you hate everyone else? I mean, it's that big a gap?
there should be a big difference, because even your emotions, even the people that you love, say you love a girl, even those emotions can be programmed into you to see her as attractive and everything like that.
Yeah.
You're programmed to see her as attractive. And so it's still, you understand, it's like still the thing like God gives you a car or something, and now you love the car more than him or something like that. I'm not talking about God or even giving you a girl, but giving you a car. That's the more appropriate
A car's not going to
analogy.
love you back. A car doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have...
Yeah, so say the car loved you a little bit back. That's still compared. You understand? There's a big,
No, I
that's
don't.
a better
I don't
analogy.
grasp how you can have a love for an entity that you do not even you never even see. I mean, Christians say that they feel the Holy Spirit and things like that, but you never actually see God. You never actually speak to Him unless you're schizophrenic. It's just and Jesus the same thing too. You just feel that you've got this connection with Him. You may even talk to Him in your prayers, but He doesn't talk back. And yet that relationship is stronger than you might have with the love of your life. It doesn't
But
compute.
anyway, let's go back to the
Okay.
evil stuff, because we kind of drifted off.
That's
but,
true.
I see real evil actually as pointing towards the Creator, because, like you said, evil is just subjective if there is no Creator.
Mhm.
But so if there is real evil, for example, say demons exist and demons are real evil, then it actually points towards a Creator and could be indirect evidence for Creator. But you say,
why would what would make a demon evil? How would you identify it as evil?
you can see him what he does. The opposite of what God's command is, like love one another, and it hates everyone. And you understand, it would do the opposite of everything that God commands.
Well, yeah, but what about God saying things like He's commanded His people in what is it? 1 Samuel 15:3, or 3:15? May have flipped that around. He ordered His own people to go into a town, rip babies from the mothers, and essentially kill them, stab them, hack them to death. That is something we would consider monstrously evil, ordering people to go kill babies, rip them from the mother's breast and kill them.
How many animals have you killed?
Well, if we go back to that one, my feelings have changed over time, because as a kid I didn't care if I used a slingshot and killed a bird. It didn't mean much to me. I didn't want to see it suffer, but I'd kill it and eat it, no problem. I currently do eat meat, although in limited quantities. But I recognize that there is an ethical conundrum there, and things change. There was a time when being a vegetarian was quirky, silly, at least in my society. And now it's actually a way of life. Many people accept it. It's no big deal. And people will often consider that much more moral than eating farm-raised, or not farm-raised, but factory farming of animals, which are treated cruelly. And I personally don't want to support that, so I'm still okay with eating meat, but I want ethically grown meat that basically has a great life, one bad day.
One bad day.
One bad day.
Of suffering.
Well, not even the whole day.
Okay,
Just a moment. Like, moo, that's it. Done.
Okay, so you look for meat that doesn't suffer, or what?
Ideally, that's what I would like. And even better is currently in the labs they're making meat from just a few muscle cells, growing in the lab to a full substrate. They now have that already in... It doesn't have the marbling and the fiber, the grain essentially that a normal piece of meat has, but they have reproduced the equivalent of ground up meat, a burger.
I know about that.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't heard about it? It's something you might want to look
Yeah,
into.
I have heard about it.
Oh, you have heard about it. Okay. It is kind of fascinating,
Yeah.
and that would be, that would be a few cells of meat that don't even hurt the animal when it's removed from them. And then,
so then people that hunt after that are considered evil, according to you, that hunt for fun.
I said this is something that's evolving. I have been a hunter myself, and when I've wounded an animal and it's gotten away and I've never been able to catch it, to put it out of its misery, I felt bad about that, and that is empathy. Empathy is the source of morality in general. And so, yeah, I'm evolving on that, and I expect to continue evolving. I suspect that within a decade or two, I will not be interested in having any factory farmed meat, and I won't go hunting as well.
Okay, but even
I haven't been hunting in many years as it is. But
I think your empathy is even almost programmed into you.
Yeah.
Because like psychopaths, they don't feel empathy.
Some people are missing that. Yeah.
So
some parts of the brain that they can't
and also
feel what or imagine what other people feel and relate to it.
And but so getting back to evil, you say demons are not evidence for a creator. Say you realize demons exist, would you realize perhaps then you are deceived, or would you then
have you ever read the book Childhood's End?
No, what's that?
Well, it doesn't really matter. It's a science fiction novel where the aliens look just like how we imagine demons to look like, and so they have to be very careful when they introduce themselves to our society. That's not important. The important part is that they look just like demons, but they weren't. They were an alien species. So the discovery of, let's say, winged, red, fork-tailed creatures by itself is not evidence of a creator. But it is evidence for. It could be evidence for demons if that turns out that demons are just aliens. Then that would be evidence for demons.
Okay, so but if we find that these aliens are concerned with a lot of Christian stuff the whole time and do the opposite that what God commands, like love and stuff like that, they always do the opposite. Would you then more classified as demons then, or?
Not necessarily. Maybe they have different values. And consider that a lot of behaviors that have been done throughout history we would consider evil were committed by humans who were considered good by God. Moses was ordered to go through, God told Moses to collect his most trusted people, go through the camp and kill 3,000 of their friends and family. And that was considered good. He made them priests after that. Even though, and the reason that he had them do that was because they worshipped a golden calf. I think that's the particular story there. But that is behavior that you would think is against what God says, but yet he was the one who ordered that behavior. So...
Okay, so if, say, we make robots and some of them rebel against us and we tell the other robots, go and eliminate those robots that rebelled against us, even if they feel pain, so that would be morally evil.
It would be the same thing as if we did, if another country attacked us and we ordered our militaries to attack those people. Mm-hmm. So, no, self-defense I think is a perfectly reasonable, in fact, necessary component of living. That's not necessarily evil. It's how you do it. If you do it, if you defend in a way that ends up torturing your opponents, then that can be evil. Yeah, that's called war crimes.
Okay, but so you say demons would not be evidence for a creator. Say we realize there's definitely something like a demon, it would not be evidence for a creator.
Does the Bible
Would it be
describe
fine?
what demons look like?
No.
No, it doesn't. So how do we know what demons would be like if we saw one?
Because like I said, there would be evil.
But there are
evil.
people who
I'm
are
talking
evil.
about real.
But there are people who are just like that. And in fact, God behaves that way in many times in the Bible. So how do you
Like
square
you said,
that?
if you can justify it, you wouldn't hate him. But say you realize that he exists and he hasn't yet justified what he did, then you would hate him.
My reaction toward God would be based on his behavior, as I've read in the Bible, that he is worthy of hate because he behaves in ways that we consider, I'm sure you as well would consider, evil. And maybe he does have a good description for that. Maybe it turns out he's not all-powerful after all, and he's just doing the best he can, and it just so happens that he can't control humanity. He can't intervene. If that's the case, then he wouldn't be at fault. And that's why I don't really have a problem with old earth creationists particularly, because they can take that idea that, well, God started the earth or started the universe with the Big Bang and sat back and is watching this whole thing progress. He can't interfere. Some believe that. That'd be more of a deist type God. Some say he could interfere, but he doesn't because he doesn't claim to be good. Of course, the Bible does say he claims to be good, but my argument is that if he is all-powerful, he is able to intervene, and he is the one who actually created everything intending for it to come out exactly as it did, then he is necessarily evil because he is the one who created all the conditions that inevitably led up to evil, and then has the gall to punish humanity for doing exactly what he arranged for them to do. And that is not just betrayal, but ultimate evil in my esteemed opinion.
Yeah, but I still think we have some kind of free will, and that's why even in court cases we can hold you responsible for what you did.
But then
because
you're
not
saying
just a
that the
robot.
Bible is not true in that regard, like those passages that I read earlier.
No, that I think you're taking it perhaps out of context. Like
I've done a lot of studying on this and asked multiple people who are familiar with the Bible where I'm wrong on this. I want to be. Whenever I come up with a claim, I don't just want to hope that it works. I test it. I want to make sure that if there's any proof against it, I want that to be known because I don't want to make false claims. And when something here like, Lord, I know the people's lives are not their loans, it is not for them to direct their steps, that to me can only be read as God controls everything. His every decision is from the Lord. The Lord establishes their steps. It is the Lord's purpose that prevails. The person's steps are directed by the Lord. Predestined, works out him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. Those are phrases that do not lend to the notion of free will.
Yeah, but so there's no possibility that we still could have free will even with those passages, because I think that we still have free will even with those passages. Like,
but then where do you get the idea that we have free will then?
Yeah, but it's like saying God created our bodies, our heart beats automatically. We have no free will with that.
Right.
Some stuff we don't have free will, but there's still some stuff that is excluded from those passages that I think we have free will.
So like God does not work out everything.
God. I think we can reject God, and still that would work out. God can still use that. Your free will for the overall picture. Just like God used the free will of the people that did evil against Jesus for the good.
So you're saying that God does not determine everything.
I'm saying God gives us free will because he doesn't want robots. And
but where do you get that idea? See, because there's nowhere in the Bible that it says we have free will. And nowhere in the Bible does it say where God doesn't want robots. The way I see it is the Bible, life, if the Bible is true, and if all these passages indicate that we don't have free will, then we are essentially like characters in a novel. The full book exists already. That's like God knowing basically the entire history, being timeless, essentially. He's got the entire novel. And the characters in the book think that they have free will. But the author, the guy who actually wrote the novel, in this case God, knows everything that's going on, controls every action, controls every person, every character that appears, and that person enacts his will, even though that character in the story has no idea that he's a character that's completely under the control of the author. See, that's what I interpret as that chunk of those passages that indicate there is no free will, but we have the perception of free will, just like characters in a novel.
Okay, so in a novel, a person can't use characters that have free will and still get to the ultimate objective, or to some objective that he wants to get to.
I'm not sure.
Say in a computer game, the creator wants you to have free will in the game, but he's still gonna push the game into a certain direction, and you have free will, but he can use that even to affect the game, or
yes,
you understand?
That could be, except that then you would say God plans most things, or plans the general items, and the individual details are up to the individuals.
So it has to go in such detail.
Well,
to
but I would say you would not use the word everything. God plans everything. If you use the term everything, then that means everything. Either God plans everything, or the Bible cannot be trusted to mean what it actually says.
If the creator of the game plans everything, and he gives you free will, and he even plans your free will,
then he doesn't plan everything. Then he hasn't planned everything. He's only planned some things. He hasn't pled the part where you have free will to make your own decisions.
And he knows what decisions you would make. He gives you free will. He knows what decisions you would make, and he uses that for the ultimate goal in the game.
Well, then you can't change your decisions, can you?
Yeah, but say someone can still know what decision you would make, even when you have free will.
Okay.
Or isn't that possible to have free will without someone knowing?
Well, you could. If you look at history, and if free will exists, and you look at history, then you know exactly what's happened in history, but all the actions that those people took were free will actions. I mean, that's the way you could look at it. But the problem with that is, it goes back to my initial statement at the very beginning here, and we need to kind of wrap this up here, so it might be a good area to go. But that is that if God is all-knowing and all-powerful, then not only can he imagine every possible world that could exist, but he could create that, and yet he chose this world to create, which means how it turned out is up to him. He could have chosen to create one of the worlds where everyone makes the right decisions. He didn't. He chose this one. Therefore, he is fully to blame for any evil that occurs in this world, and yet he blames us for his own actions.
Okay, so he programmed you to blaspheme him, and he programmed you to use your hands against him and your mouth.
Essentially.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, you think that an author writes a book with the protagonists having a great time all the way through? No. There's tension, there's enemies.
So you had no free will in those actions. You just had...
According to the Bible, that there is no free will. And according to science, there's a strong indication that there isn't free will. So the combination of both of those, whether theological or scientific, is not looking good for the concept of free will, and therefore not looking good for the concept of God being good.
Okay, but so you say God is evil, but I wonder if people saw all the evil you did in your life, if they would be super shocked.
I don't think I don't think I've ever actually committed murder, genocide, slavery,
Okay, but say,
theft.
how many
Well,
times
theft,
did you
yeah,
lie?
I did shoplift when I was a kid, and I
You
have told
shoplift?
some white lies in the past as well.
How many times? Like thousands.
Yeah, well, does any one of those compare to what God has done? God has
And how
lied.
many people have you hated? Because God says, even if you hate your brother, it's like a murder. To
God hated. God hated. What was it? I can't pronounce the guy's name, but hated Asu and loved so and so.
Yeah, like I told you, the hate in the Bible is used like loved someone more than someone else. In the Bible, it's used like saying, I hated you, but I didn't hate you. I just loved someone else more than you. And it looked like hate compared to the love I have for someone else.
Well, if that's the case, then the love that we have for anyone is nothing compared to the actual range of possible love that exists, and we are incapable of going to that part. Because I don't know of any... I've known plenty of people who felt ultimate love for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They give all of their heart to that person, and yet that's supposed to be like essentially nothing compared to how one should love God. I don't think people are capable of loving more than they love. And the
Remember,
whole,
like in your worldview, it's just chemicals.
Yeah.
So your love is like a program.
yeah,
So it's not
essentially.
real love, actually. It's just,
Who cares
you
whether
don't
it's
have a
real
choice.
or not? I mean, it really doesn't matter to me the slightest bit whether I have free will or I don't, whether love is real or fabricated. It feels real. I feel like I have free will. That's all that really matters. And that's all that anyone can really hope for, because if you don't have free will, but you actually have that perception that you have free will and you're okay with that, then that's all that really matters.
We probably have to wrap it up because
Yeah,
otherwise
it
we
is.
can't post the whole
Yeah,
video.
that last one, just for everyone else who might be watching here, the last debate took almost 3 hours, and it took me 33 hours to upload because I have crappy internet where I happen to live, and it doesn't get any better than that, unfortunately, not yet. So I'm hoping to keep this fairly short so I can not have to wait so long in the upload. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate your coming on to discuss this. I know it's not your specific topic, being you're not a biblical literalist, but you still provided some interesting back and forth. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
Talk to you
Thanks,
later.
Derek.
Bye-bye.